Alright guys, so you can see that I scribed a bunch of lines, and you can see this general area is the middle, because you can see how it's not perfectly rounded, it's just pretty close. So I know my center is going to be right about there. So that's where I'm going to drill to put my drive screw in for me to be able to put this on the lathe. And you see how I have a bunch of random lines on here? I'll show you actually how I did that. Because since I don't have a center finder big enough for this, I only have one for smaller blanks, this is what we do. Go ahead, you put it on the side, draw a line there, draw a line there, come around, draw another one, another one, and another one. So now that we have that, now we just line this up, draw the line it up with the other one we drew, which just so happens to be almost the same line. Then draw this one, line this one up, draw that one, we have this one right here, draw that one, and then we take this one and draw that one. So actually that got caught in the green. So once again, you can see where it comes together. It's all in a rough spot, and I'm sure if I drill straight through, that's going to coincide with that one. So the reason I did both sides is now I have to figure out which side I want to use that I think I'm going to get the better looking sides and base out of. So I really like all this going along this top edge up here. So if I made this the bottom, all this would get turned away to go to a bottom for the bowl. But if I make this basic, like not really much decoration in the wood, if I make this the bottom, then that means you're going to have all this nice, all the figuring and all the, just everything is going to stay at the top, because this is in essence going to be cut back on an angle like that to have our bottom. So we'll still have a lot of this up here to be able to use. So I think what I'm going to do is, this is going to be how I'm first going to mount it in my lathe. I'm going to put my drive screw in there. Then I'll get it loaded up, so that way when it's in the lathe like this, most of this will be getting turned off, and I'll be able to keep probably, I don't know, maybe a 4 or 5 inch base on this. Alright, so there you go. That'll be probably about the size of the base, and then the top will be almost the same diameter. It might come in probably about a 1/4 of an inch just to get it finished. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking for as a little bit of a template on how I want this project to go. So hope you guys come along, and we'll see you once we get it put on the lathe. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drill my hole in the center. And as you can tell, I am using a center countersink bit. The reason I do that, it's just going to make it easier for me to keep it straight. So now we want to drill the proper size. And in that case, we need to get our drive screw, which is going to be that's what's going to be going in there. So we want it about the diameter of the inside. You want it to be the size of the shank, not the threads, because you want it to hold on. And we got one that's close. Then we line it up to make sure it's about the same size as the shank, which as you can see it is. So now we're going to take this, put this in a drill, then we're going to drill our hole. We want to make sure that we go down straight, because that's what's going to keep this whole thing centered. And you want to go down deep enough to make sure that it bottoms out against the shoulder of this, because this is going to get screwed in there like so. But I'll do that on the lathe because it's so much easier to do on the lathe, so I'll take you guys over there to show you how that gets done. Alright, so here we go. I don't know if you guys can see, but we put this on here. Then we spin our little hand wheel. Lock the head. Turn it on here. Get it tight. So now that we have that tight, we will be bringing our tailstock up, putting that against the center, and as you can see, there you go. Then we start to turn it. You can see it's off a little bit, and a lot of that has to do with it not being completely round. It's just a rough cut, but it's something that'll get you started. And as you can see over on this side, I still have my layout of what I want my base to be like. So my base will probably be about that big, and then I'll be able to mount it in my chuck down there at the bottom. So I'll come back to you when I get turning. Alright, let's see what we got here. I have it turned down pretty low, so looks pretty good. So I'll get my safety stuff on and we'll start showing this thing up. What do you say? Whenever I'm turning anything that has substantial size on it or loose pieces, I always make sure I wear my visor. Other than that, I normally just wear safety glasses if it's a small part, but I don't want something like this if it does decide to fly off the lathe. I want to have something between my face. I'd rather have this whole thing rather than this one piece of wood come flying at me. So, alright, let's get started. So, as you can see how out of a round it is, it's hitting here, it hits all through here, a little bit right there. So, I'm going to switch over from my carbide to my actual bowl gouge, and we'll just go at it, make it a little bit easier on myself. Go one pass, we're basically roughed in, and you can see up here how even taking that much off, just because of how out around it was, you know, I was probably off a little bit, but it's kind of like hit and miss all the way around because it had flat spots. So just keep working at it. You want to keep your tool rest as close as possible. Without it hitting. That'll be fine, because this is going to come right off anyway. So there we are, looking pretty good. I can now increase the speed since I have a nice round piece of wood. I don't have to worry about anything flying off. So I'm going to increase the speed up a little bit, then I'll start to hog off that material along the back end over there. Alright, we're back. I have this running at probably about 1,000 now. So just remember to stay, you don't want to be standing right here if you don't have to be. You want to be off to the side. You don't want anything to fly back and hit you. So just going to screw this up a little bit. And there you go. So now I'm just going to start cutting this back, and I'm just going to go in and take some square cuts and rough it in to the diameter I want, the general shape, and then after that we'll start to finish it up a little bit. There you go. I'm down to about my diameter, and now I'll just start stepping this back how I like it. Everything is a work in progress. Every time I turn something, I have an idea of what I want. Then once I start to see what the wood starts to give me, I move on from there and we see what we come up with. The gist of the shape that I want to have, I might radius this in a little bit higher to come up and meet this top edge, but that's what we're going for. Now since this is still wet, I will be leaving this probably about a 1-inch wall. I'm just going to rough it in right now. I'll let it dry and warp, and then I'll be able to come back and finish it up. So let's just get it roughed in and go from there. Beautiful bowl. Beautiful bowl. There we go. That's roughly the size I want. Look at that. That is beautiful going through there. It's going to be a really beautiful bowl when I get done. got a little schmutz on you. Alright, so now the next thing is to be able to get this in my chuck. So the way I got to do that is to put a recess in the size of the jaws of my chuck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back this out, and you can still see how we're still stable, right? So make sure you're out of gear before you start messing around with the chuck. Now what we're looking for here is when these are expanded, we only want to open them up a hair. We don't want to fully extend them, because then that gets vibration and a bunch of other things. So I would normally tell you don't take a piece of work out unless you have to, but because this is going to be what they call the twice turn method, what's going to happen is I'm going to let this sit off to the side. It's going to finish drying. Once it does dry, then I'm going to come back and finish it, because it's going to warp and distort, but you leave it thick enough to where it won't crack. Or I could finish it up right now, but in order to do that I would have to take it down to an extremely thin wall, and then it would warp and distort. I want to try and have a nice board. A nice bolt. So there's multiple ways we can do this. One of the easiest ways I found is just take a pair of dividers, tighten them down to the diameter. Now that's going to be roughly our size that we want to have. So that's not going to be the back size. So the back size would be, because these jaws are dovetailed, so they have an angle on them. So I'm going to start with the back size, because that'll give me the rough dimension that I want, and then after that I cut, I kind of cut back to get my dovetail, so that way it'll hold. If you guys look, you see that angle that's right there? You got to recreate that angle in the back when you mount your bowl. So let's get you set back up. And there you go. Take your lock off so that you don't pop your breaker. I have done that. And now I'll actually keep that out of the way. I am going to bring my stop up though. So let's take that out, because we got to slide this up. I do like my stop to be up against something, especially, if I'm not 100% sure about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little test first, out of the way. Still running pretty true, looks tight. I feel safe. I step in front of it. Basically what we're going to do, we're going to take these in, and you're going to see a line appear. And we basically want to go until that line matches. We scribe it, and that's the size of our jaws. This main line, the deep line on the inside, and as you can see, that's the size right there. So there you go. Try not to touch both points like I did, because then it'll jump back on you. So now we put our tool rest back in. That's about the size of the base that I want to have. So to do this, we do have to have the stock out. So let's see what we look like. Okay. I feel confident that's going to run fine. piece of maple is getting a pretty good finish on it already. Most of which is because it's wet. Wet wood is, or green wood, is a lot easier to turn. So we're just going to go ahead. We're going to kind of just like punch in, clear that out, put our dovetail on it, and we're going to be done. I should use my rounded one. So we're going to start from the middle. This is just all the wax that's on the outside of it because it is green wood. You can see that I'm not at the right height. So we move that up, make sure we're locked down good. And we want to go the rough depth of our jaws too. So, because you want it to bottom out against the face of your jaws. So the way you do that, a depth gauge. So it doesn't have to read right, trust me. The only thing you want to do is be able to set it to a depth, and then you can go in, you can check what you need. So I'm going to set it from the back here. Give it a little bit more than what I think it is. So now that's the depth we got to go. So now I can put it up and I can say, you know what, not deep enough, got to keep going. Big job. Down to the real wet stuff now. The reason I know that is I'm getting sprayed with water. And you can also see that all the shavings have changed a little bit. But look at some of these nice markings we have in here though. This is going to be great. And you want to leave about it, I want to say it's like 10%. So in this case, I want to leave like 1.2 inches. Since it's a roughly 12 inches. So we want to leave about 1.25 inches all the way around. So I'm just going to go in and start roughing out the sides a little bit real quick. And then it's basically going to get put in a bag and we'll see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't crack on me. So here we go. Like I said, we want to leave about, it was about 4 inches or so when I started. So we got ourselves a quick measurement here. Doesn't have to be a great one. There we are, we're at about 2 inches, and the overall width of this one is about 3.5. So we're at about 50%. So I'm going to want to take this down probably about another inch, leave the whole thing about as thick as this is, and then we'll let it dry. So I'm going to go ahead and rough that out. And you can see I'm getting tear out, but once again, not worried about it, not a concern, because it's just roughed. guys, don't forget, just because we're roughing this in, it doesn't mean that we just want to hog it out and just leave. We want to try and keep it as even as possible with the outside. So now you're starting to see it's looking a little bit better now that I'm taking my time a little bit. So let's tighten this back up a little. You want to make sure that you double check as you go. I got stuff all down my shirt. Oh, it's all itchy. You don't want to really crank down on it, but you do want to make sure it's going to stay safe for you. Now we'll go ahead, we'll get another quick measurement. Like I said, doesn't have to be anything special. We're about 2 inches and we're about 3.5. So we'll want to go down probably about another 1/2 inch or so. Let's see what this looks like if we take our stop out, our tailstock out. Here we go. Let's take another quick measurement. We're at about 2 1/4 of an overall height of 3.5. That gives us about 1 1/4 there, and we're about 1 1/8 to 1 1/4 there. So that's about where we want to be. Now we're just going to let this sit in shavings in a bag, and probably come back to it in about 3 or 4 months. Check the moisture reading, and if it's where it needs to be, we'll finish the cut. So hopefully you guys stick around for that, and have fun, guys. See you next time.